Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
And now for a stirring rendition of Happy Birthday.
Oh, really?
Don't you sing, Jared? You look like somebody who would have a good voice.
No. Well, if I got good training, I might be good.
Yeah?
But I've had absolutely no training, and
So you do have a potential of having a good voice. My mic is flaccid, I believe, is that well. It's been doing this, so I don't know. It's not. It'll be what it'll be. But Jared Day is joining us today. He, of course, is the creator of Daylee News Nuggets, which informs, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people all over the country. Mm-hmm. I know of some of your followers in Missouri, actually, I think Vancouver. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all over the place.
They are all over the place. I have some in England, Florida. Yeah.
Well, we all appreciate it, in fact. But the happy birthday rendition is because it's
Lincoln's birthday.
It is Abraham Lincoln's birthday, which I believe when I was a child we celebrated in school. And then somehow it disappeared and turned into something called
President's Day.
Yes, and what I want to know is that all presidents, or is that just lumping George and Abe together? Or did anybody ever really make that clear?
Don't know. That is, I don't know the history of that holiday. It is. I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's lumping the two of them together.
Because Washington's birthday was when? Is when? See, his was not as big a to-do, I don't think, as Lincoln's, was it?
Up until Lincoln, it was. Through much of the 19th century, Washington's birthday was considered right up there as one of the really important holidays.
Never
But
mind
they're in
me.
the same neighborhood. They're right with. I think they're within 2 weeks of one another.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely both February birthdays. Okay, I thought you looked like you had a good voice, but you do not look like you have a mechanical bent.
No,
so you're
not
not
at
going
all.
to fix my mic stand.
I have no idea.
Okay,
I can honestly say until I actually came into this studio, I'd never even been close to one of those units.
All right, well, dang it.
So.
All right, well, here, I'm just going to sort of hold it, is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, great.
All right. And I failed to properly introduce Jared, who is the Director of Research and Programs at the Forum for Economic Development. And you say economic. I say economic.
Okay.
What do you say, tomato?
No.
Good. Also a research associate at Carnegie Mellon University. Okay, so this is Lincoln's birthday, and we thought we'd use that as a jumping-off point for the general discussion today. And I hope you enjoy it. Do you know who else was born on this day?
Who?
Charles Darwin.
My God.
Yeah, it's a big day. And if you were born on February 12th, you got some good company.
Yes.
Good company. David D'Angelo, who blogs at Two Political Junkies, said that he always considers this day Happy Darwin Day, and he blogged on a Darwin Day resolution in the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, though, that gets sent to the Science Committee at the House, which is chaired by the Science Committee in the House of Representatives is chaired by a guy who does not believe in global warming.
Sure. Who do you
I don't know. I
is?
forget the name. No. But I probably if you
with
check
that
out
with that as his lead, you can pretty well predict some other attitudes that he has about science.
And then get this. Then, if you get down to the subcommittee level, you have the chair of the committee's oversight subcommittee is a guy who has famously said that the theory of evolution came straight, quote, from the pits of hell. Remember him? All these guys are populating. I don't know, why am I smiling? The Science Committee.
Yeah.
In our Congress.
Well, that's what it's you get called to those things that you are interested in, and for those people who think that is what's the case, then you want to be on that committee so you can snuff out people like the guy from the proposal from
right. Yeah. Because he thinks the reason that evolution is straight from the pits of hell is he thinks it's an attempt to keep us all from knowing our Lord and Savior, and he also then of course subscribes to the belief that the world is about 9,000 years old. I thought they thought it was 7,000, but maybe they've
Did you see that
quiz
that I posted on my blog about a year ago from a creationist? It was like a middle school or maybe even a grammar school. And it had it had a whole series of these questions.
Mind-boggling.
Yes.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember. It's frightening.
It was just like, wow. And the student got 100, but with these answers that were just like, holy cow. It's like, so this is...
Man.
Yep.
Well... All right, so thanks to David and Two Political Junkies. Apparently, he's blogged more on that today. So, it's an auspicious day. Two extraordinarily great human beings were born, and probably even more.
Yeah.
But those are the two that we are aware of. Mm-hmm. And if Abraham Lincoln were president today, first of all, he wouldn't be a Republican, would he?
Unlikely. It's unlikely. But it's such a different world and a different universe that he lived in
that he can't really make that.
Yeah, it's now given the depths of his compassion, I can't. I have trouble imagining it.
Okay.
But that's actually one of the things that makes Abraham Lincoln so interesting and so compelling. And it's like one of the reasons why he almost always makes the top 2 or 3 presidents in both.
Well, as well he should.
Absolutely. But it's his capacity both for compassion and to learn and change his mind over time. He's just such when we talk about great human beings, what makes him great is his human being.
Well, I wonder, and I'm thinking again of another great leader who's was a rather conservative politically, Winston Churchill, and I'm thinking that both of those men who served in such extraordinarily difficult times were both very human in that they were struggling often with serious depression.
Yes. Yeah, both of them suffered from that, and it was one of the things that actually made Winston's wife, Clemmy, it would like drive her away for parts of the year because
really, she just go.
She was he was highly dependent on her, and if you're really dealing with depression, and you have somebody who's like who you are dependent upon, it wears you out.
Yeah.
And it would wear her out. And so he
called it his black dog.
Yep.
And when the black dog came and really sat down, but he obviously wasn't so paralyzed that he couldn't function, nor Lincoln, who was deemed by friends to be very near suicidal a number of times.
Yes. And getting, like with Winston Churchill, he knew that the way to deal with the black dog was through just being really busy and active and mentally engaged.
And drinking as much as you possibly could.
Well, perhaps.
Well, I think he did. He was drinking in the morning.
Although, it's interesting that almost all of his biographers, they don't describe him. It's rare that he was ever drunk. And this is somebody who had champagne for breakfast.
Yes, but this is why I'm thinking it's sort of like giving Ritalin to hyperactive kids. Ritalin would, in anybody else, it revs them up, doesn't it? I believe so. And if you have the illness, it focuses you and calms you down. No. I think he was self-medicating with alcohol, and it tamped down his demons and cigars and allowed him then to function. Who knows? But pretty extraordinary. I know FDR, or I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, who was sort of stunned to see him wandering around the White House one day, I think half naked and drinking, at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
She was appalled.
We have a caller. Okay. Hello.
Hi guys, I love the show, but Lynn, you're making me crazy holding that microphone. See those two things on either side? Those are called thumb screws.
I've got them both screwed in.
Well, you need to make sure they're as tight. There you go. No, on the outside. Now turn the one on your left towards you.
I'm doing that, and it's not.
And it may be stripped out. But,
I think it is.
Those are thumb screws. That helped a little bit.
It's stripped. But I'd already done that because I could see that was something to do. But it's stripped.
And somebody that might be stripped. That one you're turning towards you, it's lefty loosey, righty tighty. So
I know, but it's stripped. It's not.
Okay, sorry.
Well, no, I appreciate the
effort. One too.
Huh?
Hold it up to where you want it and tighten that one on the other side.
Oh no, that one goes the other way.
So you're loosening. There you go.
No,
yeah,
I'm
lefty
not.
loosey, righty tighty. All right, see you guys.
Bye-bye. There you go.
Whee! And that's just, we're operating on one wing there because this guy is totally screwed. Okay. All right, where were we?
We were talking about Winston and Eleanor Roosevelt.
Okay. Well, we're getting a little off off of Abe.
I think I told you once one of the funniest Winston in the White House stories was it was December, I think, 1941, that Winston came. This was right after December 7th with Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And Winston was in a real rush to meet with FDR so they could start really planning concretely. So he came and he spent about 2 weeks, most of it in the White House on the second floor.
Right.
And there's a really wonderful book about this, several, I think. But one of the funniest stories to come out of that is at one point FDR in his wheelchair was coming over to visit Winston, and he kind of pushes open the door, and there's Winston kind of completely naked.
Yeah, he seems to have preferred being naked.
He liked that. His air baths. He was there, and FDR was kind of chagrined, and he kind of starts to back away and apologize, and Winston says something to the effect that, well, no need to go, Mr. President. Let it never be said that the Prime Minister has anything to hide from the President of the United States. Yeah.
Oh, God, what two great characters. Churchill.
Yep, and FDR.
Churchill and FDR. What a trip.
Yep.
And thank God for them.
Yeah.
It's, I'm an agnostic, and yet the times when I start to think that there might be some divine intervention is when it seems that in times when our nation absolutely had to have the right person, guy at the time, in the job, along comes this gangly, weird, strange Abraham Lincoln out of Illinois at the right time.
Or the
George Washington at the right time. Or Franklin Delano Roosevelt at the right time. Caller again.
Okay.
Hello.
You know, you talk about Abraham Lincoln. I always remember the last part of the Gettysburg Address, this part where he says, "A nation out to people, for the people, and by the people will never perish from the earth."
Yes.
And I think we've become a nation now, or a government of the money, for the money, and by the money. And I think that was one thing that would disturb him the most.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I agree. We've lost...
Well, that was one of the things that is often overlooked in Abraham Lincoln's legacy, is that he was the head of the Republican Party before it got taken over by the corporate interests in a substantial way.
That's why I said, would he be a Republican today? I can't imagine.
It was not until the Grant administration in the 1870s, and that's why Grant is on the, whatever it is, the $100 bill. That
should be the $100,000. I think he's on the 50. He's on the 50.
Yeah, is because he did so much to assist kind of the corporatization, the Wall Streetization of the Republican Party. Lincoln, he was of
the people. You can't get more populi than him.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that Lincoln didn't do a lot. I mean, the robber barons of the 1860s. That's right during the Civil War. Then many of those, like the Armour Meat Packing Company and Swift Meat Packing Company, and some of the this wasn't U.S. Steel at the time. Many of the steel companies, that's where they became really huge. Is in the Civil War.
Well, but during war, those people
right.
They were supplying the troops. Is that what they were?
Yeah,
the meat packers and the.
Oh yeah.
A lot of deep-pocketed people get a lot of money to fill those pockets during wartime.
Sure, but the Republican Party was the only action in town, of course.
Yeah.
For most of that time.
So, have there been many efforts in terms of revisionism of Lincoln, where people try to argue that he was not a great president?
Oh, it's actually going on right now. It's really quite interesting, and it's very, I would say, under the radar.
Because it's considered unseemly? No one will talk. How dare you say such a thing? Is that what it is?
Well, Abraham Lincoln, when he was president during the Civil War, it saw the greatest expansion of executive power in American history.
Can you imagine what the Tea Partiers would be saying?
Well, there is a segment, I think, within the right wing that has been really reassessing Republican presidents. It's very much in this attitude of tolerating middle of the road or moderate Republicans. And so if you march back in time...
Oh, heck, then you disown Teddy Roosevelt.
Exactly. Teddy Roosevelt's a problem.
Lincoln's a problem.
Lincoln's a
All your great Republican presidents become a problem.
And Calvin Coolidge...
Eisenhower is a problem?
Absolutely. And Calvin Coolidge becomes a good president. I mean, who is it? Amity Shlaes, who's, I think, on the Wall Street Journal editorial page, that she has a new... It's been a well-received biography of Coolidge. I think it's the second one to come along in recent years, where it really
silent
tries
to make him a great president.
And I'm not there yet, but hey, I like good biographies of almost any president.
Sure.
Because I think that particularly the modern presidency, I would say since FDR. It's such an overwhelming if you are awake, you're on the job, and it is so demanding that I think that I don't care if it's Jimmy Carter or George W. Bush. It's just like hearing about the fire hydrant of information and demands that come upon them on a day-to-day basis. It's a once in the world kind of a job.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Well, there's actually an interesting story from the ancient Romans, where I don't know if you remember the reading about. I think I can't remember now which Roman emperor it was that decided that the Roman Empire was too big. And he split it in half. And there's the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. It's really the Western Roman Empire that falls. The Eastern, the Byzantine Empire, it stays in existence until the 1400s, in the fall of Constantinople. So, it's like that this break.
He did that because he couldn't handle all of it?
He couldn't handle it.
So,
it was,
my gosh.
I think it might have been Diocletian. I think it was Diocletian.
But so who did he turn the East over to?
I can't remember.
Okay.
It was.
I never heard this.
Yeah, it was. But it was. I look at the modern presidency now, and I can totally get an executive like Diocletian looking at his empire and saying, it takes me 5 months to reach to get from me to Jerusalem or to Alexandria.
Well, can you imagine? Can you imagine? So wait,
no.
I want to. I just to get truly light for a moment.
Sure.
I happened the other day to. I'm a classic movie buff, and I will watch any old movie.
Okay.
I don't care if it is total garbage.
I love classic movies
just
too.
watch them. I don't know why. Sometimes just because I think they're funny. Sometimes because they're just wonderful. Anyway, a really bad one is about Abraham Lincoln.
Are you sure?
And it ends after.
Who's in it?
The last shot is when he's going off to Washington to take his position.
Yeah.
And he's played by Raymond Massey.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I could barely watch it, and here's. I remember when I was in acting school, my acting teacher, Sanford Meisner, said to us that if you want an example of simply the most atrocious acting ever
Yes.
that has been captured on film.
Okay.
Raymond Massey.
Was it
as
Lincoln in
Abraham
Illinois?
Lincoln. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And he is so god-awful. It is so unbelievable. He is so not human.
Yeah.
He's like walking around like a statue.
Yes.
It is just the worst.
Yes.
Now, one of the best Lincolns I think I've seen is the recent one, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, okay.
Do you agree with that or not?
I thought it was outstanding, yeah.
Who's your favorite Lincoln?
Well, I liked
Henry Fonda. Yeah,
young Abe Lincoln.
Yeah,
I think that was his movie.
Yeah.
I thought he was outstanding in that.
Yeah.
That he, and it is, and I don't know if it's aged really well. It has its moments of campiness, but Daniel Day-Lewis is just.
Well, he just.
I regret that Stevens. I don't know if you know the story behind the movie is that when he originally got the writer to write the script.
Spielberg.
Spielberg didn't write the script. He had another somebody else wrote the script. That it was he had enough for 3 movies.
Oh sure. Or more.
And it was the kind of thing. It was like a 500 or 600 page script.
Yeah.
and it was the kind of thing. So they had to pick. What they were going to do, and I there's a part of me that wishes that they'd been brave
and gone to what?
Multiple movies.
Oh, really?
Like with the Lord of the Rings, it takes nerve to choose to do something like that, and I wish there's a part of me that wishes he had, but who knows? We might not have ended up with the really great movie that we got. I mean, I think, Daniel.
Okay, so we're going to.
Awesome.
Okay. You suggested that we talk about what makes a great president, and is there agreement? I mean, it seems that whatever makes a great president is whatever I think makes a great president.
Exactly.
I mean, right? It's a totally subjective
but
thing.
it's useful to have some kind of criteria. And I'm not sure if we've spoken about this on the program.
Well, the 3 that we've mentioned, Washington, Lincoln, and FDR, who I all think are great presidents, all saved the nation, literally, right?
Or created the nation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were either going to be great or disastrous.
Exactly.
I mean, just given the time, right?
The way that I often frame that for my students is when I talk about that presidents, only a handful of presidents have national existential crises that demand that they get it right. I think we've talked about this. And it's like sometimes there's moments, but other times, like with FDR and Lincoln, it's their entire presidency is the moment.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that they navigate prolonged breakdowns that, that if it's a lesser president, and of course with Lincoln, he's preceded by a series of lesser presidents who just demonstrate, how, the flip side being what makes for a failed president.
Well, so imagine if Buchanan had been president when the southern states seceded.
Yeah.
Although they wouldn't.
Nothing would have happened.
No.
Well, they would have seceded, and he would have done nothing. He had already.
So we would have lost.
His intention was clearly declared that he didn't want them to secede, but he didn't feel that the president had the authority under the Constitution to stop them. And so he would have been. Now, there was no way he wasn't. The way the election for 1860 went, there was no way he was going to be the next president. But it was, that was what he was facing.
But I mean, how lucky that World War II, there's FDR, Civil War, there's Abraham Lincoln, Revolutionary War, there's George Washington, men who were up to the job, when we see throughout history that there were a number of people in that position who during much lesser times that did not require as much, couldn't handle the job. So it's just incredible. I mean, we're either incredibly lucky or there's some divine I have to take a break.
Okay.
The two of us could just talk and talk and talk.
Yep. Indeed.
Indeed. But we will.
In a minute.
After this.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Download the brand new CP Haps app and find out what's going on in Pittsburgh. It's the fun and free app that puts the most popular events at your fingertips. Text events to 77948 to download now and register to win tickets to see Cirque du Soleil's Verikai at Peterson Event Center on March 28th. Plus, lots of great free stuff every week. The CP Haps app, brought to you by Pittsburgh City Paper.
Moments in Black History, brought to you by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.
Meta Vo Warwick Fuller studied at the Pennsylvania Museum and School for Industrial Arts on a full scholarship. By the turn of the 20th century, she was in Paris studying the French sculptor Rodin. With the appearance of the Harlem Renaissance, Fuller became widely recognized in America as well as in Paris. Emerging as a visual artist at the forefront of the Harlem Renaissance, Fuller was one of the first black sculptors to use anti-slavery themes for her work and the first artist to draw themes for her work from African-American folktales. Fuller's works are in collections in the San Francisco Museum of Fine Arts, Howard University, and the Schomburg. Meta Vo Warwick Fuller died on March 13, 1968.
I've seen too many of my neighbors affected by stroke, but Highmark is helping us change that by sponsoring our community stroke programs. Caring isn't new for Highmark. I know. I've been a member for 40 years. I'm Jerry Ann Allen, and I'm better with Blue.
We're reinventing affordable health care by keeping the places we call home healthy. It's why our communities are better with Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield is an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, subject to the terms of your benefit plan.
Dr. John Chips. And I'm Dr. Tim Chips. We have a family dental practice that's been in business for over 35 years.
We have 2 locations in the North Hills.
No insurance? No problem. We have a new patient special that includes an exam, cleaning, and x-rays for just $99. Find Chips Dental on the web. Remember, Chips
Dental. Have a question or an opinion? call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay, we are extolling one of our greatest presidents, if not our greatest. Who do you put at number one, George?
Well, I think I tend to think more in groups that historians often are asked to do rankings,
and it's so ridiculous. I mean, yeah. So in a group, let's do your top.
I do
three.
I do my top three, and it's Washington, Lincoln, and FDR.
Those would be mine too.
And now, but it's interesting too when the public is polled on the same question. None of those three make it to the top three.
What? Are you kidding me? Well, no, that just shows the
Ronald
public.
Reagan.
Well, of course, because that's who they know.
That's
I mean, that's just ridiculous. So anything that didn't happen when they were around didn't happen because they don't know history.
John F. Kennedy comes in there.
Oh, for God's sake! And who'd be number three?
That I can't recall.
Let's get to let's get to Ronald Reagan then, because I mean, where do non-ideological historians now? I mean, and granted, these things change. He did not have an inconsequential presidency.
No, he had a very important one.
In many respects. I think it's a very complicated assessment. And while I did not appreciate him one whit while he was in the office, as I look back, I think he made some really good calls. And I also think he made, and I mean, obviously made some, but I do. I have, I'll give him his due. And I also think more than any president, certainly since John F. Kennedy, he knew how to use that office as the head of state, as a true human exemplar of the nation, and a lot of power comes to a president who can do that.
Sure.
Okay, you're looking like you don't agree with me.
Well, the way historians come down on Reagan is he usually comes in somewhere either in the top 10 or top 15.
And how do you feel about that?
High? I would put him definitely in the top 15.
Okay.
There's some standard reasons that are put out there as to why he is proclaimed that, and then the couple of reasons that I would point to.
The communism stuff.
Well, the fall of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. I mean,
but those would have happened.
Not necessarily. Yeah, okay. It's the kind of thing that I actually am suspicious of that conversation, in the sense that that there had been many moments. There's actually a really good book that discusses previous times during previous presidencies when things might have been negotiated differently, or things might have been ended, and
opportunities were missed.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the key for Reagan was that he had an interlocutor in Gorbachev.
That's right.
And most historians put the end of the Cold War, the balance works out in Gorbachev's favor in that equation. That Reagan, he was late in coming to where Gorbachev was.
But he finally did, and he recognized
he did.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of conservative pundits out there who look at his legacy, and they start with the top line of, Reagan ended the Cold War. And they don't look underneath as to what in his decision making had him take the decisions that he made. Because we talked last time about the Able Archer exercise from the early 80s and the kind of hard-nosed, hawkish approach that he took in his first term. And how close that came to not just kind of nuclear war, but even things that actually did happen, like the downing of Korean Flight 107,
Yes, right.
that it was like this was a disaster that was a direct result of his policies in terms of his provocativeness towards Andropov and all of that. But so historians, when they look at assessing Reagan, one of the things they look at is how he changed his mind. Okay.
Literally, I mean,
This is-
what really did a 180?
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
It's like what you don't hear from conservatives is the piece about how it wasn't being tough and hard nosed and
No.
telling the Soviets what they could go. No, it was him changing his mind from turning away from doing those things.
He wasn't bellicose. He reached out.
Yep, he reached out. And, one of the most interesting features to that was the person who probably made the biggest difference for him in making that transition was Nancy Reagan. That she, early on in his first term, she took a dislike to Donald Reagan and the other hawks.
Really?
And she would, take Ronnie aside and say, Ronnie, you got to get rid of these guys. You got to get rid of these guys. They are leading you wrong. And after the Able Archer exercise and similar types of things, he began, Paul Nitze, a whole bunch of these just super hawks.
He jettisoned them?
He jettisoned them and replaced them with Ed Schultz and James Baker and people like that.
Much more moderate.
Sane. Actually, Condoleezza Rice was one of those who came in. It's just like, so it's like.
But can I just say
Sure.
one of the things, because I'm starting to itch because we're sitting here talking so nicely about Ronald Reagan, and I think my audience is freaking out. I
Yes.
just want to add that on the other side, I think he did incalculable damage, and we're still seeing the result of it. He's the one who flat out started this demonization of government itself.
Absolutely.
And that we have seen, the Republicans have glommed onto that baby, and they will not let go. And you see how that has spread cynicism and disaffection throughout our nation. And since supposedly our form of government has to do with us, the people, being part of the equation, if you have a disaffected populace, you can't have the United States of America as the Founding Fathers suggested it should be.
Sure.
And Ronald Reagan, with the force of his personality and the force of his
persuasiveness.
His persuasiveness, really pulled that baby off, and we're still suffering from it, and I don't know if we'll ever come back from it. And so if you're, okay, fine, ended the Cold War, but did that to us as well.
Absolutely.
And that pulls him way down.
Yep. Well, I wouldn't argue. I would add a piece to that in that I think one of the other disservices that he did the nation was creating this illusion that somehow you could cut taxes and
not raise revenue
and that somehow he privileged cutting taxes over cutting spending or coming to some a working relationship between those two things. Because I'll never forget, it was a Dick Cheney in the early 2000s when he was confronted by conservatives about, why you've allowed the government to grow so much, the deficit is wildly out of control. And Dick Cheney said, well, Reagan showed us that deficits don't matter. And yep, Reagan did that, and so it's a terrible legacy. To leave both his party with, and this is what you see out amongst Americans. They don't want their programs cut, and they don't want their taxes raised.
Right.
And it's like, well, guess what?
Guess what? Then what? You want your roads paved?
That's it.
Well, okay.
So, definitely a mixed legacy.
Okay. I mean, there's so many other presidents we could go at, but
Sure. Well,
let me turn this around. Who is a president that we don't think about, that never gets mentioned in these kinds of conversations?
No.
Who you think was a damn fine president?
I would reword the question a little bit to say, which one I think was so important and is almost always overlooked, and that is James Polk.
Well, you bet he's overlooked.
Mm-hmm. He was a one-term president.
In between who and who? What do you think?
Let me see. Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren. Let me see. Harrison. Tyler.
So he's
Polk.
Like when he's in the 1840s.
40s. Yep, mid to late 40s.
Okay.
Yeah, that he was an acolyte of Andrew Jackson, and he came in, and in his 4 years, he initiated and won the Mexican-American War. The United States acquired California and Oregon and settled the borders with Canada up in Washington State.
Well, he was a warmongering, country-stealing imperialist.
That's exactly right. But that notice I didn't say good.
What'd you say? What was
I
the
said
adjective?
Important.
Important.
And it's somebody who it's just like he added as much territory to the country as Jefferson did with the Louisiana Purchase, with Texas, California, and Oregon.
Yeah. But Jefferson bought it.
Yeah.
Bought it from the French.
That's it.
He killed people and took away Mexico's country.
Well, Texas was independent at the time.
Okay, well, whatever. It wasn't ours.
Yeah, it wasn't ours.
All right.
And it was this long pas de deux between whether Texas was going to be an independent country or whether it was going to join the United States or what the hell was going to happen with it. But it ended up with the Mexican-American War being with the United States, and it's part of I think a larger pattern where there's certain wars that Americans choose to forget.
Grenada.
That's a minuscule one, but I mean like the War of 1812. Okay.
Oh yeah, nobody remembers that one.
Nope.
Well, that was huge here.
It was huge. War of 1812. You got the Mexican-American War. Now then along comes the Civil War, and I actually resist teaching that class because I already am speaking almost always, even undergraduates, but especially like adults and seniors. They know
everything.
That there's so much that people know about the Civil War that I don't really feel like that there's a lot for me to contribute there. But then you move on to like the Spanish-American War in 1898. It's like, gee, what happened? Yeah, most Americans.
We got the Philippines.
We got the Philippines. We got Cuba. We got Guam. And it really set the stage for.
It was a totally unnecessary war.
Yes.
Totally unnecessary.
Yes. Well. But that's the thing about. I mean, it doesn't even compare to the War of 1812 as in the world of unnecessary. It was. I mean,
and where does Grenada fit in that?
Well,
what was that?
What
was that?
It was those medical students.
Oh, jeez. What was that? I'm serious. I actually saw somebody say that they were recently was a veteran of Grenada. And
yes.
I thought, if I were a veteran of Grenada, I would keep it to myself.
That's true. Yes.
Okay,
well, I think with Grenada that it was that Ronald Reagan was looking for a fight to get us beyond what was then called the Vietnam Syndrome.
He wanted to show Americans that they could win a war. And if they picked a fight with a country that was about as big as a speck on the map.
Yeah, it's about the size of Manhattan.
Yeah, right. With no real standing army, we could beat the pants off those jerks. Right?
Yep.
So that is it. Oh, God, disgusting.
Yep.
That's your Ronald Reagan again, too. And yes, Americans felt real proud. I was so... embarrassed,
Yes.
humiliated. I just didn't. I thought, oh my God.
But there again, that's one of those that
What?
you ask. I mean, younger people today about Grenada.
Do they know about it at all?
No.
No, because it served a purpose at the time, but who cares? And as for the people who died in it, well, they were
Yes.
going to die anyway someday.
Right.
Okay, wait, we got to get a final break.
Okay, great.
Ronald Reagan. Very mixed
Stick around for more
legacy.
with Lynn Cullen live after this.
Join 1 Billion Rising Pittsburgh for a global day of festive resistance to end violence against women. 1 billion women assaulted and raped worldwide is an atrocity. 1 billion people dancing to end violence is a revolution. We will rise on V-Day, February 14th, 12 to 2 p.m., Market Square. www.onebillionrisingpgh.org. Strike, dance, rise.
BergBargains.com is your best bet for great deals in the Berg. Log on today for exclusive bargains from your favorite local restaurants like Steelhead Brasserie, Atria's, Verde, Burger, the Pittsburgh Grill Downtown, and the Bangkok Balcony. Sign up for the weekly email update for your chance to win a $100 gift card from the Swickley Spa. The all-new BergBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains, BergBargains.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. John Chips.
And I'm Dr. Tim Chips. We have a family dental practice that's been in business for over 35 years.
We have 2 locations in the North Hills. We are in network with most major insurance companies, including United Concordia, Cigna, and UPMC.
Find Chips Dental on the web. Remember, Chips Dental.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen live.
All right, back with Jared Day, and you know, I'm sick and tired of lauding these presidents. So let's rip into a few, okay?
Okay.
Who are the worst?
Most historians, there's here again a cohort of them.
Buchanan.
Yes, he is almost
the only
always
one our Commonwealth sent to the White House.
That's it. And he was the president right before Lincoln, and it was he did absolutely nothing. He was a Democrat, and he did nothing to stem the tide towards civil war.
Right.
And so Franklin Pierce, who was right before him, sometimes makes that like bottom 5 or 8 or 7. You know that those two.
So the country was heading toward real trouble, and we had these presidents that were absolutely asleep at the switch, and or making things worse.
Both Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, and Buchanan. Those 3 before the Civil War. They usually get in the bottom 10 somewhere.
Okay, the Three Stooges.
And then routinely you'll have Herbert Hoover, who will be down there, who was right before FDR. I have a little more sympathy.
I do too, because he had a stellar career before he was a president.
Stunning.
He's a brilliant man. He was an extraordinary engineer, right?
Yes,
and he was just a get things done kind of a guy.
And in many ways, an exemplary humanitarian. You would have thought
he'd be the right guy at that time.
Perfect, especially compared to Calvin Coolidge, who was his predecessor.
Okay, so what happened? He just got he. Well, who cares?
The magnitude of the crisis was so beyond anything he'd ever thought about, and he could not. He actually initiated some programs that FDR eventually benefited from, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, but it was so not of the magnitude that was required. And it's an open debate economically, but certainly politically, he didn't do anything. He was the wrong political player for that moment.
Is Jimmy Carter on the list of worst?
He's usually in the bottom 10 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
And
another brilliant man.
Brilliant man, and somebody who, through the Camp David Accord, I think deserves better than bottom 5. Simply that accord has lasted.
He a lot of this has to do with luck of the draw of what's happening when you get elected.
Yes.
And he, of course, he had 18% inflation, and the Iran hostage crisis.
Yes.
And he really got and gas lines. It was not a happy time.
No.
But I don't know that any president could. Well, maybe he could have done better. I don't know.
I think that his persona, and I also think that his management style, it bred disaffection within his own administration that I think just didn't work.
He was a micromanager.
Yep.
Okay.
And so he's down there, and you and I were talking off air about the
Richard
Nixon. Yeah, and
I was arguing more that he was more like a Reagan in that he did some extraordinarily good things.
Yes.
And then some extraordinarily bad.
Yes.
But you believe the bad so far outweighs the good that you put him.
Well, having said that offline, I'm going to say online that the exception for the exceptions I see for Reagan are not the standard ones. Like I think again we had talked about.
Well, I would
from
say
the 1969.
I would say China.
The China thing.
China. Opening China huge. I would say a number of his domestic.
The environmental programs.
He would be considered a progressive Democrat if you look at his economic.
He was open to doing national health care. He was open to cutting that deal. And,
there was this vileness in his heart.
His conduct of both the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal. You see, for me, what makes him so tough to resurrect is that he altered the country's attitude towards government in a way.
Okay, so you're going to say he did it before Reagan did
Absolutely.
it. Okay. He made people cynical. He made people feel the whole thing is a corrupted mess.
Yes.
But then Reagan finished us off.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I'll go with that.
Yeah, and it's like that. I think for the baby boom generation who came of age politically with the civil rights movement, Vietnam, and Watergate, it's almost like this troika of things that one being so profoundly inspiring, and then these other two that would make you think this country was headed to hell in a handbasket.
Yes, and I know we did.
And that we've kind of lived with that bipolarness in the baby boom generation ever since.
So you put Nixon in the bottom 10?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Because of that legacy. Okay. It is.
And yet Reagan gets into the top 15.
Yes.
All right. Well,
yes.
I don't know.
The Cold War.
We've all lived through both of those. Well,
yes.
Maybe some of us, not everybody, but.
Yeah, the Cold War, that throughout the Cold War, most sane betting people were betting that it was going to end ugly. Mm-hmm. And it didn't.
No, we were going to blow up.
Exactly. And the Soviets thought so. Most of the good percentage of the folks in the Pentagon and the National Defense and National Security, they all felt it's like, well, we don't know how this is going to end, but it's almost certainly going to end ugly. And it didn't.
Okay. I'm going to throw some presidents at you.
Yes.
Who I think were not bad.
Right.
William Howard Taft?
Better. His stock is rising. Doris Kearns Goodwin just came out with a new biography.
I think maybe I saw some stuff on that, which is why I thought, Taft.
Now the thing the thing.
By the way, remember him? He was the big man.
He needed a special tub for the White House when he moved in there.
Right.
But the thing about Taft, and it was one of the reasons why his stock has remained fairly low over the years, is because Teddy Roosevelt Republicans despised him, and the Democrats despised him. So, it's like he hasn't had a lot of friends afterwards to really declare. But you see, the thing that I'm beginning to look at when I think of Taft is that this is somebody who passionately believed in international arbitration as a way for countries to solve their problems.
Wow.
He was something like a pre-Wilsonian Wilsonian.
Exactly.
And nobody was taking him seriously.
That seemed like you're out in La La Land.
1908 to 1912, which is, and yet, World War I.
Imagine that if you'd had that instead of World War I.
Exactly.
Then you might not have had World War II.
That who knows? It's like you look back now and you say, well, Taft, his whole emphasis on arbitration and peace. He was part of the very much in favor of the international peace movement at the time. That's like, well, boy, things could have gone really differently if his perspective had been more ascendant.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering. Okay. Let's do the two Bushes, because my sense historians are going to say that the father was a pretty good president. Fair to middling.
I certainly put him above average.
Oh, okay, above average. And that the son was a disaster.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you would think that's true?
I think that's true.
Are we too close to make an assessment? And because we have our own, I'm thinking,
well, there's certain
100 years from now, what is a historian going to say about it?
Yeah, there's certain things that you can look at with almost any president, and it's either black or white. And like with Bush, the first Bush, that his decision not to invade Iraq when we were in Kuwait, that's a black and white decision. And it's the kind of thing that at the time, I can remember so many people, both Democrats and Republicans,
he quit,
howling.
He should have,
for him to go the road, to go that route.
Right,
and he didn't.
He didn't.
And it's like, you look back now, that was, and it's rare that presidents get credit for the things they don't do.
That's right.
Whereas the second Bush, his decisions to go both into Afghanistan and into Iraq, and Iraq especially with that weapons of mass destruction piece, it's like that's a black and white issue. You can't. It's like and what you hear from some the small coterie of defenders who still are out there, they say, well, it was worth it anyway.
Oh,
and
my
it's
God
like,
in heaven, no.
Yeah, they can have that argument.
Oh, my God.
I don't.
Look at the Middle. Remember, it was supposed to democratize Middle. Look at the Middle East.
I know.
It is more roiling, and you know what? Iraq
and torn asunder.
Iraq is this far from just out and out civil war. Those poor people are not going to know a day's peace.
Yep.
For God knows.
And to the extent that they're closer to any country around that area, it's to Iran.
Exactly.
They are not close to us at all.
No, we sent them into the warm, welcoming arms of our enemy.
Yes. Exactly.
It is absolute incompetence beyond belief.
So I think the second Bush, that it's going to take some real gymnastics in terms of argument to really overcome that black and white issue.
I'm trying to think of something good you can say that he did.
He's channeled a tremendous amount of aid to Africa for AIDS.
For AIDS, that's true. He did.
He
didn't get a lot of credit for that because I guess the guys that love him don't care about AIDS.
If you go to Africa, that he is well regarded in many countries in Africa for exactly that.
Right.
And so I would say that is something. But then again, I think he's destined to be in the bottom 10.
Two others that are relatively in modern history. Huh?
Who?
Oh, I'm not doing Clinton, and I'm not doing. No, it's just too complicated and too soon. I want to do Truman, who we love to love now after, maligning him for so long.
Yes.
And Eisenhower.
I think that both of them have seen their stock rise considerably in the last 20 years.
And you think you agree with that?
I do.
Well, how can things go in and out of style?
Well, I think what you get is a longer perspective over time, and you get access, like with Eisenhower,
to papers, and
all his papers, and the people in his administration to start really becoming open about what happened, and then you start seeing, well, boy, public image of Eisenhower as kind of this grandfatherly kind of guy in his dotage far from the truth. That this guy was a real serious manager of affairs who was on top of just about everything. But he was happy to kind of put out this image of the grandfatherly type because it was useful for him to
be above the fray.
Well, to be above the fray and to kind of say that whenever there were mistakes were made, it's like, oh, really? I just wasn't paying attention to that one. I don't know what it was. So he could kind of blow some smoke around that and defer responsibility. But he was on top of things in a way that was quite important.
Eisenhower alone, for the huge jobs program and infrastructure program called the Interstate Highway System,
yes, indeed,
deserves to be way, way, way up.
One of the other reasons that I put him up there also is, and I think we talked about this before, is that there were so many occasions in the 50s when the United States was on the cusp of being drawn into hot war with the Soviet Union.
Right.
And not only was Ike able to kind of send all of that energy in a different direction, he was able to do it like people hardly noticed. It's like
too bad for him because
Well, he didn't care. His legacy.
A tree falls in the forest.
His legacy was such that he didn't worry about that. He already knew he had a huge, substantial career even before he became president. So he was able to, make those decisions, and do it behind the scenes.
Wow. You think that, like, when we go and vote, Americans, that we have any sense of how important it is, these decisions that we collectively make? Are we just lucky when we get a good one, or are we? What do you think?
It's a good question, and I look at when Obama was elected in 2008. I view that as one of those moments
where Americans did.
We had to come up with something.
Yeah.
that was better.
Yeah.
And we did. And in my view, we did.
Yes.
I think I know a lot of progressives are kind of hand-wringing about a lot of Obama's tenure in office. I am not one of those. I think he's done an amazing job. And
given, again, the recalcitrance of the supposedly loyal opposition.
Among other things, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, well, we're done.
Isn't that amazing?
And all this, we are honoring the presidents today, or dishonoring them, as the case may be.
Yes.
It's not President's Day. What, President's Day is Monday or something? When the hell is... What is President's Day? It's Abe Lincoln's birthday, not to mention Charles Darwin's birthday. I wonder if they were born... So Darwin would have been born after Lincoln, but not
I don't know.
much.
I don't think so.
Not much.
He lived to be a very old man.
Huh.
Charles Darwin.
You don't suppose they were born on the same date in the same year?
No, I think Darwin was younger.
Younger.
Yeah.
Right.
He was a young man in, I think, the 1850s, whereas Abraham Lincoln was moving on into middle age.
Do you know, and the most amazing fact I just heard about Darwin is that he had the worst seasickness that a person could have. He never got his sea legs, never. He was puking and vomiting and dehydrated every second he was on a ship. And he was on a ship for, 3 years or something?
The Beagle,
Beagle?
Yeah.
He would, somehow when he got onto land, he'd manage to recover and do his stuff and then get back.
His life was filled with health problems.
Oh.
Yeah, he was an invalid for the last 20 years of his life, something like that.
Well, see, this guy teaches history, and it's why it's just fascinating stuff. Thank you for letting us pick your brain.
Yep.
And
happy to.
I hope we'll continue to do so on a monthly basis.
Yes.
Great. So we'll see Jared again in March, and tomorrow, Tom Sokolowski. Not going to be here tomorrow, but mending well. And it's looking really, really good for next week. So just you and me tomorrow, and have a wonderful day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.